Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good zinta, good y'all, whatever it may be, where you are. I'm not Sports Cards. Hope you're doing well. Checking in on you. Like, subscribe, do all those things that you like to do. There's my music back there. Jam. The best. The worst. Anyway, folks, well, on this episode of Not Sports Cards, what we're going to do is we're going to look at vintage 1977 Star Wars, touch a little bit on the market, but I'm really going to do a dive into the data. I've been doing these videos for about 2 years. I delete them also. You can really not look at my archives because I'm an idiot. But I took data, which is not out there, and I have data from 2021, February of 2021, of the PSA population. And what I did was looked at the current PSA population and examined how much the population of graded cards has grown. And we could also look over here, we've got the eBay screen over here of some sales that we can look through. These are some recent sales. Some Wonder, you got a Wonder Bread here. You got to get some 1977 Series 5. I'm really going to mainly focus on Series 1 because that's where most of the money is. That's, your Luke number 1, the PSA 10, which sold for $80,000 last year. And just try to get a sense of the market and give people an idea of how much grading has exploded for these cards. I want to start by looking at GemRate. GemRate's a cool site. They give you a bunch of data on, cards that are graded and all that. And last month, another huge month for PSA, did 1.4 million. What I really wanted to focus on here is that the non-sports sector is what I focus on. I'm not sports cards, right? And I have not been paying much attention to this site as much because I really look at the market, kind of what things are selling for and how often they're selling. And I haven't been paying as much attention to how many cards are getting graded. And I saw, 60,000 non-sports cards. That's a decent amount, up 7% from last month. So I think it was like in mid 50s last month. But I also looked at was what happened last year. Now, last year, PSA's open. There's no big differential here. 28,000. So we're seeing double the number of non-sports cards be graded. This does not include Pokemon and TCG. That's up here. This is just non-sports cards. So we are seeing a massive increase in the number of non-sports cards getting graded. It's good in one sense because I do believe the non-sports segment is growing fast. It's becoming a part of card collecting for kind of everybody, no matter, most people specialize in sports and what have you, but you have a lot of individuals who are migrating from sports to non-sports or making it a larger portion of what they do. But let's just go back. I want to look over here for a second. So you can see here, non-sports is now, last month was bigger than hockey or soccer, almost bigger than both of them combined. So something to think about, just the idea that non-sports card is really the fifth biggest market, and behind TCG, baseball, football, and basketball. And that's it's impressive. And it is, if we look over last year, you can see that last year it was less than hockey and soccer. And it was during this month, it was 20% of, it was no more than 20% of any of the other major sports. And we look now and it's closer to, it's definitely more than 20% of all the major sports and coming much closer to 30%. So it is growing in popularity without a doubt. Now, growing in popularity does not necessarily mean prices go up, right? What we're experiencing is definitely an increase in demand. But this is also showing an increase in supply. And this is not really to say, non-sports cards going to the moon, non-sports cards going to zero. The truth is some are going to go to the moon, some are going to go to zero. probably more to zero than to the moon for certain. But again, to me, the most iconic non-sports card set is the 1977 Star Wars. Not from TCG. TCG has its own world, but non-sports, it kind of straddles all the worlds of, it is certainly vintage, but it is also certainly not 1950s or 1940s. It's kind of a bit of the sweet spot, and that's why we look at it. It's also something I've been collecting for years. I don't collect as much of it these days as I used to because I own a ton of it, which is another question for this. So let's look at, we have some gem rate numbers over here. No, that's Wonder Bread. This is the regular one. So we are currently at, so this tracks data from September of 2021 through through now. I have data that goes back a little bit further, but this really only gives you information about the number of cards graded. We can go into the individual cards, but they only look at what has a 10 and how many cards are graded. So it doesn't get into a bit of the more nuance, which some data I'll show you in a little bit does. If you're a nerd, don't worry. This is not just nerds nerding out about nerding data. There's a story to be told from the data. So we start here. Simply to say, when they started looking at this, there were 48,000 cards graded. Now we have 96. That's kind of pretty simple math. We've doubled the number of 77 Star Wars cards graded in the last less than, almost exactly 3 years. That's a lot of supply on the market, and, has the demand met it? And the question is, in some places, yes, some places, no. We can also look to see that, hey, there were 4,200 10s now. And when we started this, there were only 4,100. Not a lot of 10s being given out, certainly over the course of these years. One thing I can tell you is that in this calendar year, we've given out, PSA has given out 100 10s. So if you think about it, in almost 3 years, they've given out 180 10s, but somehow in the last 9 months, 100 of them have been given out. Why the sudden surge? There's always a chance that somebody who had an amazing collection decided to grade it. There are both nefarious reasons why this might happen and honest reasons why it might happen. It's a bit of a coincidence. I would tend to tell you it's probably a little of column A, a little of column B. But this doesn't tell us all the picture. Now you're saying, hey, 97,000 cards are graded and we're going, right? Like we're still moving. I don't know what the number was. We've already done 200 this month in 7 days. So, but how many did we grade in September and August? 9650. So like 4,000 graded in just August. Now have been non-sports card specials. There was a May the 4th special, which impacts that. And modern Star Wars cards are getting graded a lot more. And you have the Disney Lorcana that might go into it. I don't think they really they break down by era. The non-sport, but when they give you the era on, what I'm trying to do is like try to get a sense of what non-sports cards are getting graded. They do this. They don't break up TCG and non-sports. So I can't tell you, is it modern Star Wars that's getting graded? Is it vintage Star Wars? We can see that, there is no TCG in the 80s and the 70s. So we can see that, the 70s is making up about 10,000. Maybe closer to 15,000. Let's just say pre-90s, we're getting 15,000 of those 60. It's basically 2.6 plus 0.6 is 3.2 of whatever. Yeah, it's like 18,000. So 40,000 of those non-sports cards are 90s or newer. But the 77 Star Wars cards certainly accounted for like a quarter of the 90s and earlier. And that's not even looking at Empire or Return of the Jedi. Okay, so what other data do we want to look at? So this really plays into what is happening in the market, and I'm going to go into the delta in a minute. But like, so what I've been seeing in the marketplace is that the cards that there are readily for sale are having a hard time catching a bid. Like here is a PSA 8 R2 rookie card. Was 65, sold for 52. Very nice price, nice looking card. That card used to like a year ago. It's like I'd say over the past year, it's averaged about $75 to $80. So it's a great price for the card. At the height of the market, this is a $250 card. And this is kind of not a card that's suffering a bit, but like here we have a C3PO7. A lot of these PSA 8s or these lower grades are kind of starting to fall to prices that we've never seen before. So like if you're a set collector who wants an any grade 77 set, great time to be a buyer. If you own a bunch of mid-grade 77, probably not the best time to be there. Here's an R2 PSA 9 that sold for $325. It's a pretty good price. That ranges. I saw the lowest sale I think may have ever seen a week or two ago at $225, and then they'll sell for up to $500. So these things are all over the place, but it's that's a high grade R2. If we go over to 77 here, we'll look here. So this is the R2D2 card here. There are 146 of those. That's quite a bit. We have Luke's. We have quite a few Luke's here, 3,500. So let me see if I can't. All right. Let me add this. Nope. That is not what we're going to want to add here. Let me remove that real quick. Switch back to you, and let me present something here. All right. Stop sharing that screen, and we'll see what we can't do here. Let's see. We'll just do screen number 2, and you guys can just see my screen and let it be damned. All right, so I'm just going to go and so what I did a million years ago is I just copied the 77 data. So like we were just looking at the Luke. Let me see if I can zoom this in for y'all. Maybe. It's weird that I cannot zoom. All right, let's go to 200%. It's probably a little bit. How about if we go? Sorry about that, folks. I'm just trying to make it easy enough for you to see. So, okay. Go up here. We're looking at Luke Skywalker. So this is like February 17th, 2021. There were 500 Luke's non-qualifier, half grades, 529, right? So we've already said that the cards have doubled, but we look here, Luke, there are now 3,500 of those cards. That's a lot of cards, right? So that's, it's like over around a 6 times increase in the past 30 plus years in these cards. Not surprisingly, this card has held up pretty well. This is the most important card in the set. It's a card that sold for $80,000. And we don't see too many in the high grade. But let's look at that R2D2 we just saw. So right now we see there are 1129. We go over here, and where were we? So R2D2. Interesting. There were only 287 of them way back when, but there were 114 nines. So we haven't even seen that big of an increase in the number of nines. We've only seen 25 of them. So, but we've seen a ton of increases in 8s. Now, I did do something else here. So we're going to do, it's just got so, I was running a bunch of different scripts, having fun with, let's go with the zoom again here. I keep realizing that that's not going to be the right number. Custom. Let's go with like 140 and see what happens. Okay, so this is just the change, right? Like, so the increase in the number, but includes by grade. So when we look at the R2D2, which is this column here, we can see there were an increase of 32 nines, 2 10s, but the overall increase is 842. What does this really matter? Like, I'm trying to use this as a fun example we just picked out, is that like, okay, 842, we've had how many got, but 808 of them are less than a 9. And we see the 8s have increased by 194. That's why the 8s are suffering. The 7s suffer. The 6s suffer. You do get into a point here where, so these are the key cards in the set. The very first 8 are the biggest cards. These are all considered rookies. Luke, 3PO, R2, Han Solo, Leia, Kenobi, Vader, Tarkin. There are other key cards in this set. But for simplest idea, you look at these here, and we can see that we've had 8,000 of those graded in the last. I did this somewhere else. This is the full Megillah. It's somewhere. I actually just did 77 itself. I'll see if I can. I mean, 77 series 1, but it's quite the bit of increase. You'll see other cards that went up. The Princess Leia captured. The number 58 Harrison Ford, which is a huge card. We can see there that, only one new a 10, which is surprising because I don't think the 10 population is that strong, and 15 nines. But then you get into this other thing again: 777 graded, 761 are 9 or less. And then when you get into a little lower numbers, so what we'll see over and over again is that for the most part, these mid grades, starting with 8s, there are spots where 8s are just too plentiful. And then when you get below 8, 7s on down. Now, certain one of these cards, like that 58 Han Solo and obviously the Luke, are so beautiful and so collectible that those markets maintain their way down. But when you get into a random common, whatever it may be, droids in the control room, we have 32 new 9s here. And you always have to look at it relative to I was trying to do something that would show the total, meaning like how many number 33s are graded. Oh, let's see if we go back in here. We'll look at 33. They're only 389. So we've actually 389 to. So, we've seen almost 100% increase in those cards, and there aren't that many, there aren't that many of them. The factors in the price of these cards are like, hey, set collectors, a lot of set collectors drive the market. When you get beyond series 1 is where the drop has become real precipitous in price, especially as you get in the lower range. Like, here's a card, one of my favorite cards, Imprisoned Princess Leia. There have been 170 new ones, surprisingly a 10, but the majority of them are 8 or below. So these cards, the number of people that collect Series 2 isn't that high. So those cards are coming down in value. And there are tons more where this is the case. And there are times where people, higher end set collectors, some of these cards have like no 10s. So they'll grade the hell out of these things just hoping to get a 10. And we end up with tons and tons of 8s. Let's see, what other data do I have here? So I will show you this. Okay, so this is a chart for series 1. So cards 1 through 66, the increases in number of grades. So you can barely see 1s because 108 1s, but there were like no 1s before. But you can see that the most that have been contributed here are 6, 7s, and 8s. So this is where the market is kind of, getting a little bit crushed. I wish I could apologize. I have so many data sheets at this point that, this one might have it. All right, so this is just series 1. But if we look at the total increase in 9s is 1492. what I really want is the total number of nines, period, for Series 1. But again, we have had over 25,000 cards graded from Series 1 in the past 3.5 years. But 23,000 of those are 8s and lower. And then if you look at just 7s or lower, you're at 17,000. So those cards are really, unless you take out the big cards, are really under a lot of assault for, what they're going for. So we'll look at let's just look at an auction here, how this is sold, but let's get out of sold and let's just see what we see. Once we get rid of this, let's just see what's up for sale right now. And if anything is do ending soonest. I'm not trying to make this card. These are Luke's. Now, Luke, I don't want to say Luke is not affected by this at all. I mean, I don't know why I can't think of the right word I want to use. But that card holds up the best. Like, this is around what you would have paid recently. But cards like even the PSA 9s are not holding up as strong as they used to be. A PSA 9 of kind of any card used to be 125 or above. Now, like, this one's about to end in 17 minutes, $79, $8. I wouldn't say I was always a buyer of these, but I used to be a buyer of these, like insta buy any 9 at like 50, $60 because you could always flip them. That's not the case anymore. You can see here's another key card, like a Vader. This is a series, it says 3 in a 6. Card like that always sells, but you can see not really getting much over the cost to grade that card. So there's not a lot of value in these cards. Stickers, you see here, stickers are hard to grade. That's a different animal. We'll zoom past them because stickers are not what we're analyzing today, but you can see here is, this is pretty insane. I guess we're going to have to bid this, but this is the type of thing. I'm not going to tell you what this is going to sell for, but this is an 8.5. It ends in 2 hours and 3 minutes. It doesn't, let's just see. If we bid $5, are we winning? Okay, no. How about $8? No. I don't really want to bid too much more because I don't really want the card. All right, but we'll assume it's at least $10. But if I hadn't bid here, this card could have gone for $1.25. And that's insane because that's an 8.5. Side note is an 8.5 is pretty much my favorite grade to buy right now. Sometimes 8.5s go for less than 8s, and they're usually cards that, this one not particularly, they're usually cards that look like most 9s. So I like to buy those. But you can see here these 7s, $2, 4 point, we'll go into the sold listings in a bit. Like, I don't want to use this as the total example of what's going on here, but like, you have a lot of cards that are just not catching a bid. People are being selective. Like, a lot of people are using this strategy, which I didn't used to like, which is, hey, minimum bid of a market price and then kind of let it go. I think that's not the worst strategy right now. Here's a very low pop Series 2. It's like, I don't think this is going to get a bid anyway, but there's a lot of cards that just, first of all, most people are not fire selling their cards. They're not starting these off at 99 cents. So they usually just don't sell. Like, we're just seeing cards that just don't sell. These are Mexican, entirely different. And we're also not seeing a ton for sale. We used to see a ton for sale. There's a lot of people who are just like, hey, if I'm going to get $14 for my PSA 8 Series 4, I'm not selling, right? But here I want to go back to sold because I just want to look at something like 7s and 8s. We're just going to look at 7s and 8s and just look at what they've been selling for. Now, it just comes down to what you as a collector want to buy, right? So we'll do 7s, 8s, and 9s. I wish we didn't have Wonder Bread in here, but you can see a Leia card holds up pretty well. This Kenobi, I don't know. I think that person overpaid. You have a Solo 8. Again, not that surprising. the Solo 7, it's a perfect example. Great card, $10. Like, not getting your grading costs out of it. And, you take eBay, it's like kind of everybody's a loser on that. Here's a PSA 8, Wookiee, Series 5, not easy to get. We saw these cards a bit earlier. This PSA set, like this is a particular card is very hard to find, the Outer Space X-Wing. But now we're getting into, here's a Series 2 8, $25, free shipping, right? The seller of that is not, it's not making any money. I mean, and the person who's buying it can't flip it. So you get into a stalemate. Here's $20. We saw this R2 earlier. Here's another, Series 2. Series 2 is the hardest to grade. I think Series 2 and Series 4 are the hardest to grade because of the borders, green and red. Those darker colors are usually hard. Certainly harder than Series 1. A PSA 7, $4. Here's a PSA 7 of a nice Darth Vader. Like, again, some of the better looking cards do well. Here's a PSA 9 of a Series 4. This is a common card, but like, we'll look it up in a second. What this is, 209. Okay, so let's go 209. Sold for $36, right? Now, there's nothing on that card that's like extraordinary. So we'll scroll down here to 209. I haven't done this in a long time. I hope you guys appreciate it. This stuff can be in minutia. See, so there's 93 of these. Half of these are in 9s. So like, even though it doesn't make sense that you can buy a 9, it's like, yeah, there are more 9s than any other. There are actually more 9s than there are 7s and 8s combined. So that's part of the reason why something like that would go so cheap. Here is a really cool Han and Chewie shootout SGC. We're not really getting into SGC, but this is one of the more premium cards. It's not one of the first 8 cards. And it actually has been picking up steam. One of my favorite looking cards from the set, for sure. Just one of my favorite looking cards. 7. So you see the buy it nows. This is a series, this is a Series 1 7 for $28.95. That's the way it used to be. I mean, here's one for $40. So these are good prices. Solo 8, this is the kind of the C3PO R2 rookie, 30 in a 7. By the way, I'm learning about this at the same time as you guys. Here's another PSA 9 that sold for under $40. We don't know how much. This is card 160. Let's just look at I have no idea what the pop is on this, but let's see. I mean, it's not a cool card. 91, right? Yet again, just a lot of card grades really well. This card's insane. Okay, $35 for you're like, oh, this card's insane. And then we look and it's like, because it's OC. I hate people. We all hate people who do this. Like, your card is OC. Put it in. The weird part is this card's not OC. There might be something. Oh, it is. Yeah, off center, top to bottom, but like not. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of qualifiers, but like I was like, that card, $35, we're all going to hell. Like, this is a crazy price. Oh no, C3PO. The number 66 card is yet another card. These are set collectors, where these cards are very hard to find in high grade. 66 is a weird card. It's the last card in the set, so sometimes there are more 8s than anything else, but there are not a lot. There are only 53 9s and 7 8s or 7 10s. So it's not a card you actually find in other grades. So it usually sells okay. It's just generally. Here's another 8 for sale. Again, free shipping, $23. This is one of my favorite cards from the set. It's moving up like into the top 5 of the set. May the force be with you. I don't know what it actually sold for, but in 8, it's all good. $28.85. Here, $13, right? This is a Darth Vader card, Series 4. We're gonna have to look 204. I guess it's gonna be a longer video. I like looking at this data. The data tells stories. So there are 91 of these. So there are more of these than there are kind of any other grade. So when something becomes a commodity, the price just drops, right? There are 48 9s of this. Card grade's okay. But yeah, kind of like everything ends up in that 8 range. But for $13, that's kind of a good. So this is some of the stuff that I've been seeing where, And Series 2, very difficult to grade, and you're getting eights. Eights are above average. Here's another PSA 7 Leia. I mean, to see eights in Series 2, and like here is a Luke and Leia card. Usually imagery with like Luke and Leia do better. This is a PSA 8 that went for $14. Hey, these are auctions. I don't know when they end. I mean, it's another great card. This is Han and Chewie loading up the Falcon to leave. It's a little muddy, but like I love Series 2. The red really pops for me. 1638. Listen, I'm not buying these cards. We used to, on the channel, we used to enforce the floor. We were the floor. We wouldn't let these cards sell for what they're selling for. But now I'm like, well, there's not really much money in flipping these cards. So how many of these do I want to own? And given the, this massive increase that we've seen in total grading, like I believe there are more Star Wars collectors than there ever have been, but that doesn't mean prices are going to go up. It means there's a ton, just a ton. Like how many have we graded in the last calendar year? 365 days or so. Almost 20,000 cards. It's just a lot for the market to absorb. I want to go back to one of these other things here. Go over here. Go back to our chart. But yeah, I mean, this is, we can see how many, there have been 76 new Series 1 PSA 10s. Those cards, so basically one per card over the course of 3.5 years. Those cards are rare. And I actually think those cards, they're going to bounce around a bit, but their value is probably going to go up because there are more collectors and more collectors want the best cards, and those will go up. These in here, man, a common 8, I think is, it's going to struggle. And that's what I'm seeing. I mean, we're just looking at Series 1 there. This is, see a lot of, obviously there are deals. Like we just saw this 8 sell for less than this in an auction. So $27 here. If we scroll up, I think, yeah, we saw the 8 sell for $22. So obviously some people don't like to wait for auctions and they just want to buy, and that, there is, there's usually more value in auctions than there are in buy it nows. But that's, look at what we're seeing again. Here is a Series 1 PSA 8 going for $21 is I don't want to say unheard of, but it is very rare. And I brought this card up earlier and saying, oh, Droid's in the control room. Like this is just a random card. Like, today, if you want to get this card graded, it's going to cost you $20. It is. So, I mean, somebody's selling it on eBay. It's going to cost them about $3 to sell it. So you're going to lose $2 on a above average graded Series 1 card in this situation. That's, that's worth noting here. Here's like, again, just an amazing card. This is a very difficult card to grade. Darth Vader strangles a rebel, number 75, went for $26. And again, that seller is not really going to make any money. And it's not all about making money, but it's more of like me wanting to tell people, hey, I've been saying this for a long time. Just because the card is cheaper than it used to be doesn't mean it's a good buy or a deal. So like, that card, Darth Vader strangles a rebel, there are only 23 higher. There are more 8s than it. Half the cards are almost an 8. That's why it's cheap. But still, it's not going to be easy to go out and buy a raw copy and grade that and get, certainly, you got to buy the card and you got to ship it there. It's just going to be tough. Here is a card with Luke in it. Look at these crazy prices, right? $15.50, $22.51, 20, like $26.21. I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, this is a great card. This Han and Chewie, have one of these or something like this. $10 for this card. That's a hard card to grade. What's it? 111. I'm sure there are plenty of 8s out there. Yeah, there are tons of 8s, 124 8s, lots of 9s. So yeah, so the 7s just get left to the wasteland. Yeah. There's another factor at play here is there's a lot of new collectors who've gotten in from the 2024 Topps Chrome. And there are also a lot of old collectors who are, have been waiting, Star Wars collectors, longtime Star Wars collectors who've been waiting for a new product. So I do think that the new product has sucked a lot of the wind out of the out of the market, and usually it's a bad time. There are a lot of reasons. There are a lot of excuses that I can make, saying, "Oh, this is a bad time of year. Economy's down. Star Wars, like, yeah." But I really do think that on some of this stuff, the price is kind of settling where it is, and I think the rarer stuff is where it's at. Like, I'd rather be buying a 9 for 56 than an 8 for 20. Like, and it's like there is an element of people out there just kind of have, I've mentioned this quite often. It's like people have a number in their head of a purchase that they don't even think about twice. Meaning, like, some people could be $1,000,000 and some people could be $1. Like, you could go to the store and be like, it's just $6. I don't like, I don't self-govern on that. But when it hits $50, I start to be like, do you need that? I don't know what the number is, but I think people have that number when it comes to cards. Like, I think for me, it's probably usually under 20 bucks. Where I'm like, F it, as long as the shipping's not too expensive. But yeah, it's just something to think about. These are cards that used to go for more. We can see them over and over selling, a 9 to sell for $32. There was no way you could buy a 9 in any series, like maybe a year or a year and a half ago, at $32. There's just too many set collectors out there. I have to admit, you still see the higher prices because, like, I bet you this card $199. I don't want to bet, but I would assume that there aren't a ton of them. $199. There are 40 of them. It's not a lot. There's only 170 graded. Series 4, I'm telling you, that we'll see as time goes on, right? Like, I know for a fact Series 3, which is this yellow, is easy to grade, and Series 4 is hard. So, there might be some deals or arbitrage in there. But again, this David Prost for $31, that's usually a card. I don't know if we can do it. Oh yeah, here we go. We'll open in similar active items. Here's one that's up for 20 bucks. I'm just seeing, like, if we wanted to if we want to hit buy it now on that card right now, and an 8, could we? Is there a way? Here we go. 8. They don't have. I mean, the auction's for 20 bucks. Here's a buy it now for $65. That's I mean, there are some people who have prices up from a long time ago, 160, 275, 250. Those are just not realistic prices. But I wouldn't say the person who had it, what did they have it for 65, is out of their mind. Like, it's probably a $50 card. So there are, like, like a big Vader card where it looks, you can fully see Vader. People need to think more visually than they used to, which is that, people scroll through a lot of cards and they're like, oh, okay, I like the way that one looks. I like the way this one looks. Those are some of the things that we see affecting the market overall. What do I have here? Yeah, I mean, this is just a list of, like, by card, the most increase. And we can see here that, the biggest increase is in Luke by far, but it's also the highest demand. Leia, second biggest increase, but probably the second biggest demand. And then around third is the Solo. So people are grading the cards that people want to buy. And also see the Force, that Force, may the Force be with you, 608, quite a few cards. And then you have, R2, the Han Solo, true rookie, and then Kenobi and Vader, and Tarkin. Tarkin not as much, but you can see. And then, it gives you perspective when the idea is that, like, so few 9s and 10s have been created over this last period of time. It really is, I want to say, a little bit extraordinary. Here out of Series 1, we did this earlier. There's only been 1,500 of them. Like, that's a lot fewer than there have been more 4s created. I think one of the crazier stats is like I want to see here. Let's go back to this. This data doesn't look very clean. It's like a copy and paste that I did, 3.5 years ago. But I think it's interesting to see, like, for Luke, if we look at Luke, when I started tracking this, this is going to blow your mind, right? Like it's like below 7, there were that were actually graded 152. And then we look at, I think I have it open. We look at now. So below 7, there were 52. And now below 7, there are 2,500. So that should also tell you something about Luke is like, most of the increase in Luke has been in the below 7 column. Just something to think about, right? When you're thinking about cards, we can see the delta in the Luke. We've only added 158s and 9s, still really, and for a card that big, and we've only added 500. What kind of when you include the 7? So, there are still cards out there that are worth investigating, and that I think the big characters in 9 or above are going to maintain or like do well over the long term. I think in 8 and above, like then you get into Luke, yeah, probably. Vader, yeah, probably. I don't know. I feel like more of these are coming on the market continuously, whereas like just these 9s and above, just clearly the 10s, they don't happen, right? Like, yeah, we have not seen a single Luke 10. We'd not seen a solo 10 till recently. There are only 4, I think 4 or 5 Vaders at all. So, I just think it's important to keep in mind, because we're seeing this mass increase in non-sports cards that get graded, and we're seeing a mass increase in the number of 77 tops cards get graded, and just to keep everything in perspective. And from me looking at it, it's like I don't want to be an owner or a buyer of most 8s or below unless it is just an absolutely massive card, right? Like it's just, if you're building a set, you're doing whatever, I'm all for it. I guess some of these things would be like, does it matter if this Han Solo card here, which is a cool card? Like I think that card is $25 short, but it's like, are you buying this card? Nobody wants to lose money, right? Like let's just start with that. Nobody wants to buy anything that loses money, and people will be like, I don't care, I'm not going to sell it. I always say, well, you spend $25 on this Han Solo. What if you could buy it for 12 next week? Wouldn't you rather buy another card? So, but like, does it really matter if you get this card to you at $25 or $20? Probably not. And it starts to get to a point where you're like, if it goes to 0, do I care? Like, what is the floor on this card? And I think we're starting to hit some of that, but like, then you look at something like a 3PO, like I would rather buy this Han Solo a million times before this 3PO. I don't like, purely as a which will perform better over time. Here's a great 77 Ben Series 1 under $50. PSA 8. That's kind of where we're at. Like that general card used to sell closer to 60. Now we're looking at 45, but you can see Leia 7's constantly $50. And Luke 7 is like a $300 to $500 card. It's really like $3, depending on how it looks. A nice PSA 7 Luke is 400 plus. So, what's the differential between Luke and Leia? And over the course of time, is Leia going to outperform? But then you see an 8 Leia go for 86. I have to admit, I would rather, it's a situation, I would rather own a nice looking 8 Leia for 86 than a 7, just because the likelihood of more 7s coming on board. You have to understand that, like, because we keep seeing these cards get graded and we don't know the bottom. What I mean by that, like, bottom is, of course, we don't know how many more there are out there. I have 2,077 cards in the other room. I never graded anything that I thought couldn't get a 9 or above, because my thought was always, hey, if I'm wrong, I still do okay. I never was right anyway, because I would get 4s and 8.5s and not know any difference. But like, the idea is like, how many cards are sitting out there that may end up out there? Here's a Tarkin that sold for $35. I know, because I sold it. That is a crazy low price. Me personally, I'm just clearing out some of the the PSA 8s. I just am. I would personally rather sell 2 or 3 PSA 8s and pick up a PSA 9 of a card I want than be sitting on a card that kind of you can buy every day. And that's that's something to think about. Like I personally have been focusing on cards that you can't find as readily. As simple as that. Not all my cards do I want to resell, but cards that I'm in love with today, I may not be in love with next year, and that is a fact of it. There are so few cards that I am continuously in love with and never want to sell. So here is I love this card. This is the Ben the Tractor's Beam Series 5. Probably I'm just not in this buying stage, but that's a good price for that card. I don't know what the pop is on it. Number 268 or how readily. There are 52. There are more 9s than anything else. So, I mean, it's still a decent price. Like I don't just be, there's all sorts of bias built into this, because you have to remember in certain series that, for a long period of time, people had the pick of the litter to what they should submit. And it was kind of like weighted towards the higher end because those are the only ones that were worth submitting. But here is this is a crazy low price. This is a trash compactor, like Epic Scene, Han and Luke in Stormtrooper costumes, $15.49 for a PSA 8. That's crazy low. That's just crazy. Those are. Yeah, I mean, there are some buying opportunities, but there's no real flipping opportunities in 77 Star Wars anymore. But there are some great. This is one of my favorite cards. I keep saying this, but I love the cool images from the movie that mean something, and this is like Leia giving R2 the plans to the Death Star, which is this is kind of the credit sequence from Rogue One, the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. I'm just throwing in my Rogue One stuff here. But yeah, I mean, this Han and Chewie shoot it out, $43. I think I actually even bid on that. I think my buddy Sean just bought an 8.5. But I'll give you another thing. A friend of mine, Sean, is one of my closer friends in the hobby. He bought a 2000. I don't care, Sean. I'm putting you on blast. So this is how crazy my my tastes are changing. Because I was anti-numbered cards. I was anti-shiny shit. But this set, which is, it's essentially a modernization of the 77 set that was put out in 2022, have you serial numbered cards. And I'm like, I've been keeping it to myself, but I think this set is probably something that's going to do well over time, because I think serial numbered cards are just something that sits very well with the human brain, right? Well, like we're talking about, we're just seeing all those increases in PSA pops, right? You were sitting before and you're like, oh, I have a Luke, whatever, a PSA 7 Luke. You're like, oh, it's a cool card. I was like, oh, they need 300 more of them suddenly, right? You're like, oh, 383. You're like, well, how many more are they going to come next year? You don't know. But there's a finite number when it comes to to these cards. So the other night, this card popped up, and this is the 3PO R2 rookie. This is the 1-on-1, and just he ended up buying it. But this is a card that I think is gonna outperform a lot of other Star Wars cards, just because people are like, it's a 1-on-1, it's 77, it's a night. That doesn't mean you should go buy the set. I wouldn't have thought this was a good buy out of 5. This is a unique card that only of those 8 character cards that we talked about, only 2 have ever come up for sale. And this is the second one. The other one was the Tarkin that sold in 2022 for over 3,000. So I don't know. It's just I try to navigate this thing. I was saying about how, what you're in love with today, you may not be in love with for years. So in buying something that is, you can get out of it if you want. It's not always just about well, I don't care. I'm not really in it for the money. But again, if your taste change, a lot of this ends up just being a trade, right? Or it's oh, I'm not really, I don't need all these 77 series 2, 3, 4, and 5 slabs, but I kind of would whatever. I'd like one of these. I'm just trading, right? I'm not oh, I'm gonna put recently did a very large sale, which we're going to do a video about. That, put money in my pocket, and like, it didn't matter. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I've been waiting all this time, I can buy these cards, but like, I don't know. But I did buy more cards. It's an ecosystem, meaning for most people, we sell some cards, we buy some cards. Some of us put free cash in every year and we buy more cards than we sell. And some people do it the other way, where they sell more cards than they buy. But I think for the most part, everybody does that. And it's something to keep in mind. That's why I look at these numbers that we've been looking at today. Right. And I think it's worth you keeping in mind as you, as you make your purchases, especially if you're a 77 collector, that, if you want to set collect like series, like a PSA 8, 5 series, all 5 series, like, I don't know if it's going to get too much better than it is right now. I'm not saying it can't get much better, but like, when you're paying grading fees for PSA 8s in most, non-major cards, yeah, sure, I can see the market continuing to go down. You could buy those at $15, but it's just like, I do think there's a floor. I truly do. Like, I think somewhere around $10, 10, 12, $15, sure. Listen, everything can go to zero. I certainly feel like 7s and 6s and 5s can go, like, their floor is lower, right? Because if an 8's $15, what are you going to pay for a 7 or a 6? It's just something to think about. So I don't know. I think that's going to do it for me. I really didn't intend on doing this long of a video. I was trying to keep it simpler, but sometimes I just like to talk. That's just what I like to do. So, again, like, subscribe, do all those things you're supposed to do, right? That's content creator. We're not done yet. Yeah, I have some big news that's coming up. I have some big deals that we had done, and also some projects we're working on for the future that will clue people in on very, very shortly. But again, we're going to be cranking out more content. You can check me out on Instagram, Not Sports Cards, over there. I've been posting some cards, but we've got some ideas in the works. So, like, subscribe, do all those things, comment, and we'll keep at it. So, play my music. What you like? They say, oy vey. Rating is a scam. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. It's your jam. Not Sports Cards is the best. The best. Not Sports Cards is the worst. The worst. P.S. the Soca blows. Cassian rules. World's greatest non-sports content creator. Luke, Leia, Spider-Man, Harry Potter, Darth Vader. This is the end, man. This is when we do it. And away we go. I'm Not Sports Cards, and I am